Happy Sunday, everybody. Hope you are having a great night and a good weekend. I'm getting an echo here, so I'm going to turn this thing off. It's good to be with you. It is the 30th of April, if you can believe the last day of April. It is May 1st, tomorrow. And man, it's in Boise, like a week or two ago, it was like 20 degrees, 27 degrees. And now all of a sudden, it's 90 degrees. I think I'm getting some feedback here. Just one moment in case you're hearing it. Okay, I think we're just going to do monitor off. Okay, now that should work. Yeah, so I stuck around this weekend. Erica, as you know, my wife, was out here Friday. She came to court with me. If you missed Friday's Courtroom Insider, go back and watch. She actually came on and shared her thoughts about being in the courtroom. And we had a good weekend together. No kids were here. My parents came and watched them, but the weather really warmed up. Friday, we went out and walked around Boise at night. It was nice to get out and see the city. And then yesterday, I actually went to a journalism training seminar about courts and the legal system in Idaho that was put on by the Idaho Press Club and the University of Idaho. And it was the law school, and it was a great training there. I'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute. And was with some of my colleagues who came from Idaho Falls for that. And then after, we went to the Idaho Press Club Awards Banquet in downtown Boise. And we were fortunate enough to take home some honors for our journalism work last year in 2022. And today, I've been out and about. Erica went home, and my allergies are really acting up because of everything blooming. So if I start to sneeze, you know why. I just ran and got some allergy medicine, and hopefully I'll be okay. But I can't believe it. We are about to go into week 5 of Lori Vallow's trial. It's actually, that includes the week of jury selection. So there's that 1 week, and then there's been 3 weeks of testimony. So for the actual trial, we're going into week 4. But tonight we're gonna discuss some memorable moments and witnesses from the past month and what we can expect as we go into week 5 as things are winding down, not winding down, I should say, but things are moving along. We have had 46 witnesses called so far. If you can believe it, 46 witnesses. They have gone through these witnesses, and I think that they're nearing the end. The prosecution, of course, then the defense can call their witnesses. But here's kind of how it will work going forward. So the prosecution, let's say that they spend this next week calling their final witnesses. There's still some people we have not heard from that I expect we will hear from, like Melanie Pulowski. She has not taken the stand. She likely will be a witness. Detective Ron Ball from the Rexburg Police Department. We haven't heard from him. I know he's been here, haven't seen him in the courtroom. He was there the very first time that police went over to Lori Vallow's apartment in Rexburg to look for JJ. He's on the body camera footage. I expect he'll be a witness. There's some other Rexburg police witnesses that we could hear from. And then there's other witnesses that we may not even know tonight. That's kind of what happened Friday. They called 10 witnesses. We knew some of them, but there were some, like Tammy Daybell's clogging teacher. We didn't know she'd be called as a witness, and she took the stand and was up there, I think, 13 minutes. Or maybe it was 6 minutes. Some of them are quite short. And you might think, well, why do they even call them? That's so short. What's the point? It's to establish the fact, at least for that particular witness, that Tammy Daybell was healthy, that she was going to clogging classes, that it was river dance type clogging, not singing in the rain, as the prosecutor asked, and that she was getting a workout. And then we had the workout teacher, the exercise teacher who went to Zumba with Tammy and said she was training for a race. Again, that was another short witness. So there could be more of those coming. So what happens when the prosecution rests? Let's say they rest this week, end of this week, or maybe even early next week. The defense then can take as much time as they want to put on Lori Vallow Daybell's defense. They can call 46 witnesses, 50 witnesses, 0 witnesses. We kind of have an idea how many they will call. Jim Archibald has said there will be few, if any, witnesses during the case in chief, which is happening now. He did have a lot of witnesses, or at least several, that he was going to call when death penalty was on the table. Had she been found guilty, it would have then gone into a sentencing phase, and that's when Jim Archibald would have called a mental health expert and other witnesses to fight against the death penalty. Well, that's now off the table. He doesn't need to do that. So who does he call for Lori's defense? We don't know. We don't know. The witness list is sealed. What we do know is, from what I've learned, they have not yet decided if Lori will take the stand. She could, she couldn't. They will decide when the prosecution rests. And I'm sure every day they get with Lori and they talk about the pros of her taking the stand and the cons of her taking the stand. Will it hurt? Will it help? How will it hurt? How will it help? And that may be something we may not know until the morning it happens, or we might get word the night before Lori's going to take the stand, or she might never take the stand. So after that happens, then there's closing arguments. And this is where it really has to hit home with those jurors. The defense gets a chance. The prosecution gets a chance. The jurors then can deliberate. And they can deliberate, as we've seen in some cases, less than an hour. Some cases, a week or two. I don't think it'll take a week. I could be wrong, though. These jurors have been very tuned in, and I'm sure they're paying attention. So, potentially 2 weeks from now, the trial could be over. 3 weeks from now, I'm pretty sure it will be over. That's kind of the timeline we're looking at, but again, these are just guesses. Now, I mentioned that I went to a press club training on the courts this weekend. It was fascinating. We had judges there. Judge Boyce was not there, but some other Idaho judges were there. Defense attorneys were there, prosecutors. We had journalists. We had professors from the law school. There were many different topics over the course of the day, including the ethics of reporting on very tough and sensitive issues. We had a discussion about how to get access to court records, how to get into the courtroom with a camera or without a camera. And one of the things that I wanted to share with you that stuck out is there was a reporter there, Rebecca Boone, who works for the AP. She's an excellent journalist. She covered the Joseph Duncan trial. I don't know if you remember. One moment, I'm just getting a message. Joseph Duncan, back in 2005, 2006, kidnapped a little girl and a little boy and drove far away into the woods, into the mountains, the forest. I don't remember all the details. And he tortured them and videotaped it. And then he killed the little boy in front of his sister. And then he wound up back at a Denny's. This all happened in northern Idaho. And the waitress at Denny's recognized the little girl and called the police. And it was a death penalty case. And Rebecca covered it. And she was a young mom at the time. And they showed those videos in court. And it was horrific. And Joseph Duncan ended up getting the death penalty. However, 2 or 3 years ago, he died, I think of cancer or a heart attack. He died anyway in prison, so he never was executed. But Rebecca talked about the fact that these things stay with you. And it was months later, she was decorating the Christmas tree and with her little children, and she had flashbacks of what she saw in court. And I get how that can stay with you, having sat through this trial the past 3 weeks. And she talked about the importance of mental wellness, being mentally well. And so if you are following these cases and you're watching, it's important for you to keep your mental wellness. And I know a lot of times we get obsessed with these cases and these trials, but it's important to stay mentally well. And there's one point that Rebecca made. She said, when we cover these things, there's always the balance. How much do you report? Do you report at all? Do you hold some back because it's so graphic? And she kind of has the philosophy that you can't make it better. We can't make this case better. But we can do everything we can to try to make it not be worse for the victims and their families. And so if that's the standard of we can't make it better, but let's not make it worse. And in this age of social media, you've seen the TikTokers, the Facebookers, the bloggers, not necessarily with this case, although there probably are some, But with like the University of Idaho case, there were some social media people that were saying flat out that the wrong people killed those 4 students, accusing them. They were making it worse. And so my goal, I hope you know in watching this, is not to make this worse for any of the families, but to just tell the truth and just bring the truth forward. There have been, some people close to the case over the course of the 3 or 4 years who have been really frustrated with some of my reporting. The storage unit footage, I remember one person was really upset that we posted the video of Chad touching Lori Vallow's butt in the storage unit. But it was the truth. I mean, that, at least from our eyes. Maybe the video was doctored. I don't think so. No one ever disputed it. So that is kind of my point in doing these, to try to bring you understanding, truth, simplify it all down, and get to it. Okay, there we go. That's what I learned this weekend. It was a great conference. And, hopefully I can take what I learned and do it. Now, here's what I want to do tonight, because, of course, we did not have court today, but we'll be back there tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. I want to go over some of the key memorable moments, at least in my eyes, and those I've talked to who have been in the court from this case so far. I've picked out 10 memorable witnesses and 10 memorable moments and some surprising takeaways that I've observed and that other people who have come to court that I've talked to have observed. I'm not discounting any witness or any other moment. These are just simply some key things that I paid attention to. So, 10 memorable witnesses that I think will stick with the jury and have stuck with me. Kay Woodcock, she was very first. She set the table for this trial for the jury. Grandmother on the stand talking about JJ, talking about how she hadn't heard from him for a while. It was memorable. Right after her, we had Brandon Boudreaux take the stand. Brandon was very emotional. He talked about JJ. What I'll remember about Brandon's testimony is when he said JJ loved to travel. He loved getting out a suitcase, and he loved putting things in his suitcase, and he loved to go on trips. And it caused Lori to smile and turn to her attorney and say something like, yeah, he did. That was a memorable moment. Detective Hermosillo, he's the only person that has been on the stand an entire day, and then he continued the next day. He's the one that talked about the graphic discovery at Chad Daybell's house. He's the lead detective on this case. He has been in that courtroom every single day. His testimony was memorable, and he could get called again. Melanie Gibbs, her testimony was memorable. They played that call. We've heard it before, but the call she made to Chad and Lori, asking them why they told her to lie about the whereabouts of JJ and why the police were coming to the door, and she asked where they were, and Chad and Lori would not answer. It's great that she recorded that call. I think that call will be remembered by the jury who has never heard it before. And she also revealed the inner workings of their circle. I mean, some of the crazy beliefs and the castings and stuff like that. That's memorable. And to tie in line with that, Zulema. It's the first time, other than the police video that we've heard, that the police released in Chandler, that Zulema has actually spoken. We actually got to hear her, and we got to hear her description as to, again, some of the stuff that was going on. That when they did these castings, the evil spirits, the zombies, had to be burned and bound. And that's how JJ and Tylee were found. The other 5 witnesses that I think will be remembered, Colby Ryan. I don't think anyone will forget Colby, who was in that courtroom. The only member of his family left, other than his mom, came in a white shirt, tie, answered questions. They played the call he made to his mom. Then he left all alone. That was a memorable witness. David Warwick, this is Melanie Gibbs' boyfriend. Now, he's the last one, other than Lori or Alex or Chad that we know of, to see JJ alive. And his testimony is key because of that fact. And the fact that he asked Lori before he left. He was there, that you might remember, he was there the weekend in Rexburg with Melanie Gibb, the weekend that JJ was last seen. And the morning that they left, he asked to see JJ. He asked Lori, can I see JJ? I want to say goodbye. And Lori told him, JJ is a zombie. He climbed up on the fridge. He climbed up on the counters. He knocked down my picture of Jesus. he was a zombie and Alex is taking care of him. Well, that is a pivotal moment. That is a memorable moment. And you know what I remember what he said? He didn't see any scuff marks on the stainless steel fridge or on the cabinets showing that anyone had climbed on them. Summer Shiflett, Lori's sister, she took the stand. That was memorable, especially the phone call. Imagine testifying in the case of your sister who's accused of murdering her children, your niece and nephew, and having your brother who was involved be dead. So Summer took the stand. That was memorable. Samantha Gwilliam took the stand. Gwilliam, I say it wrong all the time. I'm sorry, Samantha, if you're watching. That was on Thursday and then Friday. And this is Tammy's sister. And this set the stage for Friday. The whole day was about Tammy. Her health, what she loved to do, how she loved being a grandma, the emails at the school. But Samantha, these personal witnesses, the personal connections are the ones that people remember. Those are the ones that will stick. The facts matter, absolutely. And the police that go on and give the facts and the dates and the times, we forget all that. But what do they say? They might remember what you said, but they won't forget how you made them feel. I believe that includes court. And then the last one I put on there, Coroner Brenda Dye. She was just on the stand Friday. She has taken a lot of heat over the past 3+ years for not doing an autopsy on Tammy. We finally heard from her as to why the autopsy was not done. And as to why when Tammy's body was exhumed, the cause of death will be changed from natural causes to asphyxiation. So those are kind of the 10 memorable witnesses in my view. I don't want to discount any other witnesses. There's been 36 others, but those are the 10 that I think thus far are memorable. They'll create an impact. And we have all of that audio if you go to the East Idaho News YouTube page. If you missed any of that witness testimony, we're all caught up. It's all on there. And by the way, apparently this is no matter where you're watching from, if you go to the East Idaho News page, that's where you can find all of the audio on our YouTube and the East Idaho News page website. I know that apparently this is getting streamed a few different places on Facebook and my family YouTube page, but that's where you can kind of find it. Okay, so on from the witnesses to moments. 5 memorable moments. Let me move my mouse off the screen there. Colby Ryan's phone call. Yeah, that's memorable. You got to listen if you haven't heard it. Summer Shiflett's phone call. Both of them confronting Lori after the kids were found, asking what was she doing. And then we have the autopsy photos. That will not be forgotten. We have the cause of deaths revealed. Those are memorable moments in this trial. We learned JJ's cause of death was asphyxiation with a plastic bag. We learned Tammy's cause of death. We had heard that, but asphyxiation. And we learned Tylee really didn't have a cause of death other than homicide, which we kind of knew, but the coroner confirmed it. And then the other memorable moment was the 911 calls played in court. The 911 calls made the day that Tammy Daybell died and the day that she was shot at in her driveway. Those are the calls I'm talking about. Some other moments or evidence I'm surprised they haven't brought in. Maybe they could, such as the surveillance storage footage. They did have detectives testify about it, but we didn't see it. The jury has not seen it. And maybe in the grand scheme of things, it might not be that big of a deal, but it is interesting that hasn't been brought up. They have definitely seen the wedding photos of Chad and Lori on the beach with the rings. I could have added that to the memorable moments thing. And then there's some other things that they might bring up as time goes on, as far as actual text messages. We've seen texts for sure, but there's more. There's got to be more in emails, and maybe again that will come into play this week. So I am surprised that we have not seen the surveillance video from the storage unit. I've got it all. we haven't posted all of it. There's so much of it, but Lori coming in the car and different turns. I mean, there's like 12 cameras there. So I'll be interested to see if they go with that. Now, I want to go over observations. By the way, no matter where you're watching from, please comment wherever you're at. And then if you have a question, I'm going to try to get through a ton of questions tonight and go as fast as we can to get through them all. And then we'll kick off Monday right tomorrow. Here are some observations in talking with people who have come to the trial for the very first time. Lori Daybell's behavior. So I've reported on this, and if you've been in the courtroom, you've seen Lori is kind of how she's been at every trial. There's been a few moments where she's appeared sad. Most moments she appears kind of aloof or engaged, chatting with her attorneys. She has not been like other defendants I've covered, who sometimes show great emotion. She has not. She did the day that they showed the autopsy photos of her kids, and then another day earlier this week where they showed the autopsy photos. And also when Colby was on the stand, one of the things that I did not witness, but a few other reporters did and told me, is that when Colby took the stand, she said something like, "Oh, my baby." And that was an interesting moment. Okay. Another observation that people are surprised about is how the attorneys interact with each other. And by that, I mean the defense attorneys interacting with the prosecutors. They're friendly. These guys have all worked together. They've been on this case for a long time together. When before the trial starts each day, they might be chatting with each other, going back and forth, maybe, showing exhibits or whatever, not like official exhibits, but saying, "Do you have this one?" It's not, fighting nonstop, but they get along. And so many people have told me that have come to the trial, I'm surprised that that's how it is. I didn't think it'd be like that. Another observation, there are still 18 jurors on the panel. These guys have sat there for 3 weeks. The judge has not had to dismiss any of them. And they've all seemed attentive. Now, there have been a few days where one or another might ask to go on a break a little early. I'll tell you, it's going to be long to sit in there. If you got to go to the bathroom, you got to go. But 18 jurors are still on there. It will be fascinating if by the time the verdict come, or by the time deliberations come, which of those 18 the judge will pick to actually be in the pool. And then the other 6 just go home, if there's still 6. They sat through the trial as an alternate, and they didn't even get to contribute to the pool. That'll be interesting. The public interest. This is probably my number one surprise. I know people are interested in this case and have been. I'm shocked at just how much people are. I mean, everywhere I go almost, people come up and talk to me, which I love. I'm glad when you come up and say hi to me. But the number of people that watch this, thank you. Thank you for watching, and go to our website. And we just had our highest month ever in East Idaho news history. And that's job security, first of all, for me. But 2, it shows that there is still an interest. The fact that the national media are here still 3 or 4 weeks into this, the fact that people want to talk about it, it's interesting to me that people are still interested. And I'd love to know your thoughts. Do you think that'll still be the case with Chad's case when that comes, with Chad's trial? Are you going to watch? If he actually has a trial and they broadcasted it, would you watch? Or if they don't, are you going to follow along and keep up? Because that would be interesting to hear your take on that. And then the last one is court procedures. A lot of people have told me they're kind of surprised at how the court works, because we have seen television shows. There's drama all the time. There hasn't been a lot of drama. There's, of course, objections, and the judge will sustain or overrule. There's a lot of downtime. They got to wait for the witness to walk in. The witness is sworn in. They sit down before they present exhibits. The prosecution will move to admit an exhibit. Then the defense has to say, okay, we're fine with admitting the exhibit. They have to have a number associated to the exhibit. Then the prosecution has to ask for permission to publish the exhibit, show it to the jury in the courtroom. There's a bunch of steps, legal steps you have to take. It's not just, boom, put it on the screen and there it is. So a lot of people that I've talked to said they've been kind of surprised and fascinated with the court procedures. There are so many court procedures, and you have to get it on the record. Also, something that one of my good friends told me, they didn't know that when you take the witness stand, you can only answer the question asked of you. You can't go up and tell a story or give your statement. You have to answer the question that's asked. And if you veer off, the defense or the prosecutor, depending on which case, can object and say you're beyond the scope. Focus in. So those are the kind of the top 5 observations that I've observed, that many of you have observed who have come to court. And yes, if you want to come to court, you still can. It's a public courtroom. Anybody visiting can. In Ada County, where it's here, and you have to get a ticket the day before at 8 o'clock. So tomorrow you can't come to the actual, courtroom, but you can as long as you get a ticket. And if you're in the area, I would probably suggest it if you're interested in this, because it's fascinating. It is fascinating. I've covered courts for 16, 17 years. I've been in trials. I've covered verdicts. I've covered all sorts of hearings. This is something else. This is something different. All right, I want to get to your questions. But before I do that, I have a great memory of Charles Vallow. Every night, if you're new to this show, I have, from day one, I've wanted to remember the victims who, the whole reason that we're here, and show a different side of them. We've seen a lot of their pictures. We know how they died, but I want to talk about kind of how they lived. So we've got J.J. Vallow, we've got Tylee Ryan, we've got Tammy Daybell, we've got Charles Vallow. I've learned a lot about these people just over the past 3 or 4 weeks. And if you knew them and you're comfortable sending me a private message on my Facebook or my email and allowing me to share a memory of them, please do, because I'll do it, and I'd love to. And you can remain anonymous or not. This message is not anonymous, unanimous. It's not anonymous. This is from Melanie and Jerry Vallow, Charles' brother and sister-in-law, and this is what it says. In 1988, in Austin, Texas, Charles, Jerry, and Charles's girlfriend, at the time her name was Heather, had gone out for the evening. Charles had a boxer dog named Marbles, and it was Christmas. Charles had a beautiful 16-foot tree meticulously decorated. When they arrived home, Marbles greeted them at the door, covered in icicles, with a look of innocence from the tree, which she had destroyed, and it was laying on the floor. As was his personality, Charles just busted out laughing at Marbles' Christmas shenanigans. This is a story both Charles and Jerry have told me about. And that is Marbles right there. Eventually, Charles met Cheryl and she fell in love with Marbles. So Cheryl Wheeler is the one in the photo, the woman in that photo with Marbles. I've interviewed Cheryl, wonderful, wonderful woman. She and Charles ended up splitting up, and she's come to court with her husband here in Boise. And she and Charles had 2 sons together. But this is Marbles, the mischievous little dog that took down the Christmas tree after a night they'll remember. Isn't it funny that you think when somebody dies that you're going to remember the huge moments, the weddings, the graduations, and you do, but the ones that you might remember more are these little stories about Marbles the dog bringing down the Christmas tree. I've heard many people say that. One woman I interviewed about a different story years ago, and she said that her sister had been dead about 2 years, and she had been killed in a horrible crash, and she was at the grocery store, and it was late on a Friday night, and she was walking down the aisle, and she saw her sister's favorite M&Ms. And she broke down sobbing. She's like, it just hit me out of nowhere. And that's the grief process. So tonight we remember Charles and his cute little dog Marbles, and JJ and Tylee and Tammy. And thank you for sending that memory, Melanie and Jerry. Okay, question time. If you've got them, post them. We have a lot here. I'll try to get through them as much as I can. I have not pre-read many of these, but our wonderful helper, Peggy, has pulled these. Nate, I'm downright perplexed, if not livid, that John Pryor can march into the courtroom each week. That's not fair. Well, you might be mad, but it is fair and it's legal. He can go in there. In fact, he is sitting in the reserved seats behind the defense. And it would probably be, if you had an attorney and you were in jail and you had a co-conspirator, an alleged co-conspirator who was on trial, would you not want your attorney there? So yeah, he's in there. I haven't seen him take many notes. I've seen him listen. He's not there every day. I don't think he was there at all Friday. He has gone to other court sessions, but he's there and he's getting a preview kind of what his trial will be with Chad. I've spoken with him off the record. He comes out what happens when they have breaks is you leave the courtroom and everybody kind of mingles outside the courtroom until we're allowed back in. He'll mingle with people. So yeah, I know that a lot of you have said, why can he be in there? How is that allowed? He said he had so much to do. Well, he probably wants to be in there. Or he could send like one of his legal teams or assistants to be in there, and that would also work. But yeah, he has every right to be there. And I know you don't think it's fair, but he has that right. How much longer is court in session? I think I kind of addressed that earlier. A month from now, we better have a verdict come June 1st. I think it'll be sooner than that. Jane says previous testimony showed Alex's phone at a church near Chad's the very night Tammy was killed. Could it be that Alex killed Tammy? I think it very well could be that. I don't know if we'll ever know for certain, but we might find out this week. The coroner, did not testify of that, but Alex was in the area, and we do know that night, according to witness testimony, that 3 text messages were sent, I believe, between Alex, Lori, and Chad around 11:42 and 11:43 that evening of Tammy's death. So yes, Alex could have killed her, but I don't know if we'll ever for sure know. Frankly, I'm baffled and outraged that the coroner did not order an autopsy on Tammy. In court, they mentioned cause of death was not changed. Why? Why on earth would it not be changed to homicide? Okay, so that was mentioned Friday. Originally, the cause of death was, I think, pulmonary embolism, natural causes. The coroner said she's changing the cause of death to what the medical examiner in Utah found out, which was asphyxiation. But she said she hasn't done it yet. And when Jim Archibald asked why, she said it was pending an investigation. And he said, well, what investigation? They changed the cause of death. Why haven't you changed it? And she said, I was waiting for the trial to end. Or something like that. So again, that was another moment where I think a lot of people were like, well, why didn't she change it? Now, in her defense, they probably didn't change it because then the public and the media may have found out about it. Although they've been so secretive about all that stuff that maybe we wouldn't have. But still, it came out, and she did say it will change on Tammy's cause of death, on the death certificate. It is going to change. Okay. I've been wondering about something. The fact that they decided not to do an autopsy on Tammy Daybell. Wondering if when the 911 call was made for her death, does the 911 operator realize that another call was made from the residence 2 weeks before? If the coroner had realized this, would they have changed her opinion on doing an autopsy at that time? Oh, that's a good question. Yes, I'm pretty sure that the coroner would have done it. I don't know if they put 2 and 2 together. Remember that the call with the paintball shooting, they chalked it up to a prank, a weird prank. And she wrote about it on Facebook. But you think about it, if that 2 weeks ago, do you remember what you were doing 2 weeks ago? I mean, time goes so quick. I'm not making excuses for them, but I don't know if it doesn't sound like there was some sort of computer system that logs, oh, hold on, 2 weeks ago when they called 911 about Tammy the second time, that when she died. If they typed in her address, if the dispatcher would have seen, oh, we went out there 2 weeks ago for an attempted shooting, and now she's dead. I'm sure if they had connected the dots, the coroner would have pushed more for an autopsy. The coroner has the final say. She could have said, no, we're going to do it. Doesn't that make you wonder what would have happened had they done it right away and learned that in October? Marcia, was Chad and Tammy's move to Idaho due to his developing relationship with Lori? No. Chad and Tammy moved to Idaho in 2016. He did not meet Lori until 2018. But the move, according to all the witnesses, was because of his religious beliefs and teachings. He felt that God needed him in Rexburg, and that's why he came. And then he ended up meeting Lori because of that. Check me if I'm wrong about Tammy Daybell, but wasn't she a part of this weird religious cult that believes they have to execute the possessed zombies? And now she is executed and her children are brainwashed and won't come to court on her behalf? If I'm wrong, then help me understand. I think you're wrong. Every indication is Tammy was not in this group. She's never mentioned going to the meetings. Chad was leaving town to do these meetings. I don't think there's been any record that any of these casting out meetings were held in Rexburg. Now, granted, Chad and Lori did go to the Rexburg temple together, but there's that mainstream church, and then there's this group of a small number of people that were talking about zombies and possessing them. As far as her children being brainwashed and won't come to court on her behalf, I can't comment on that. But Tammy was not involved in the group. By every indication, she was not. Liz says, I'm wondering which of the Daybell children were living at home at the time of the shooting in the driveway. We've always assumed the man dressed in black was Alex. However, Deputy Cannon mentioned in his testimony that Tammy first thought it could have been her son because they had the same build. I just can't see her confusing Garth's build, who was built more like Chad, for Alex's build, who is taller and much slimmer. Was she thinking of a different son, or is there a possibility that the shooter wasn't Alex? Okay, so the deputy testified that when the masked gunman came up to Tammy thought for a moment, this is a prank. Maybe it's one of my sons. He had the same build as my son. And I believe that she was referring to Garth, who was inside the house with Chad. But after the deputy said she had the same build, he had the same build, they realized that no, he actually didn't. Garth had a longer torso, like whoever sent this in said that yeah, the build was not the same. But she thought for a moment, maybe this is one of my kids playing a joke on me, and then realized that it wasn't. Amy says, have they ever asked in court if Chad's kids were taught the things he taught Lori and others? No, they haven't asked that in court. And I have not heard if they were taught the zombie type stuff. Chad seemed to be pretty, I don't know if guarded is the word, but careful about who he spoke with about those teachings, to the fact that Tammy Daybell, as far as we're aware, his own wife, never even knew them. And her sister, Samantha, and her family had no clue about them. Now, they did know that Chad was big into the gathering and thought Rexburg was the promised land, but they'd never heard the stuff about zombies. Sabrina from Georgia. Hi, how are you, Sabrina? Are you planning on attending and covering Chad's trial? What about Charles's? Yes, and yes. If Chad has a trial and doesn't take a plea deal, I don't even know if a plea deal's on the table, but when Chad goes to trial, I will be there. When there's a trial for Charles in Arizona, I'll go every day. Yeah, I'm going to cover it. I've been on this story from the beginning, and I'll continue to do so. Lisa says, have the Daybell kids said anything lately? No, not publicly. Amy, will Emma be questioned? Her behavior over the entire thing has been more bizarre than all of the kids put together. I don't know if she'll be called as a witness. There's a chance in Chad's trial that definitely I would think Garth would be called because he was there the night his mom died. So he will be called in, I would think, to testify. Things may have changed in this trial for Garth, but I don't know about the specifics about Emma. And if Emma is watching, and Emma, if you want to message me and clarify, I'd be happy to chat with you. Colleen, when you are LDS and cheat on your spouse, are you automatically excommunicated? Yes. Well, there's a process. You would need to meet with your leader of your group, of your ward, which is your congregation. There's a bishop, and you would need to go in and tell him that you cheated on your spouse. And I guess depending on the extent of the affair and your spouse's involvement, and there's a lot of factors. They could say we're going to excommunicate you, and you would be able to tell your side and still get excommunicated. Or there's a chance that some other discipline could be involved. Maybe you can't take the sacrament, the bread and water every week for a year or whatever. So it just kind of depends on the circumstances. But overall, generally, yes, you would be excommunicated if your leaders knew about it. When did they stop shackling Lori? Okay, that's a good question, Karen. Karen asked that because the first week to week and a half, they would walk Lori in and she would be shackled to the ground. And a female deputy would be standing by her. Well, then they stopped shackling her to the ground, locking her to the ground, and 2 male deputies accompanied her, and they sit directly behind her. There's also, and they're not in uniform. There's also 2 uniformed deputies in the courtroom. No, 3 uniformed deputies in the courtroom through the procedures. So it's probably a request that her team made, and they said, okay, in lieu of having a female there, we'll have 2 males, and we'll be sure that, you don't try to run for it. With all the signs of pink foam to the mouth, falling out of bed, etc., why could no autopsy be ordered? Nancy asked that. Nancy, an autopsy could have been ordered, but it wasn't. And the coroner said the other day that she didn't order it. Chad was insistent, and Emma was very insistent that the autopsies not be done, and she didn't. And I'm sure she regrets that. Audrey, are they ever going to change the death certificate? Yes, I kind of talked about that. Jackie, I wonder what Zulema thinks now about Alex with his fingerprints all over the place. Do you think Zulema knew? Is she getting some immunity deal? I don't know what Zulema knew. I'm sure she's heard about the prints. And yes, they did mention before she testified that there was some sort of immunity for her testimony, to tell the truth. I don't know what, though. I don't know what that deal was. Nancy, I guess this isn't really a question, but Nate, I hope someday, maybe after the trial, you can post a video about your news career and how you moved back to Eastern Idaho to start East Idaho News. It's an interesting story. Oh, well, thank you, Nancy. Maybe one day I'll do that. I was here. It all worked out that I was able to come back. Okay, a couple more. Who's the female attorney we see in the photos with Lori? This has popped up lately. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Lori, when she was first arrested, had 3 attorneys that she hired. And she was brought back from Hawaii. And I'm going to show you this picture. This was the photo that was taken at her very first hearing. You see this? So a lot of people have asked, who is this woman? Stop. Her name is Edwina Elcox. On the other side of her was Mark Means. After that very first hearing, Edwina left the case. So did the other attorney. I don't even remember his name. He was on it for that short of time. But Mark Means remained. Mark Means stayed on the case for quite some time, until the judge said it's a conflict of interest because he represented both Chad and Lori and their co-conspirators in a case, and Means was booted from the case. So her name is Edwina. She's not Lori's attorney anymore, but I know those photos have been circulating again, and everyone's like, wait, I thought she had the other 2 attorneys. She does. She doesn't have that one anymore. Nate, your job seems crazy stressful. Do you have to take anxiety or blood pressure medicines? As a matter of fact, I do take blood pressure meds. A few years ago, it was a Saturday or a Sunday night, and I had a lot of pain in my jaw. And I ended up at urgent care, and the doctor came in and said that I had jaw stones. I think that's what he called it. And he told me I needed to go get really sour candy and suck on the sour candy to activate the salivary glands, and then these stones would come out. But he said, I don't care about that. I care about your blood pressure. It's off the charts on a Saturday night. Do you have a stressful job? I'm like, kind of. I think this was right when this case was breaking open. So he gave me a prescription for blood pressure meds, and I've been on it ever since. But I went and had a full physical late last year, and I'm in good health. So thank you for your concern. I'm not on anti-anxiety medicine, but perhaps I should be. Is this the weirdest story you've ever covered, and have you ever messed up big time on a story? I've covered some weird stories. I once did a story on Bubble Wrap Appreciation Day, and I was live at the UPS store. I was a brand new reporter. That was kind of weird. But this is by far the biggest story I've done. Have I ever messed up? Yeah, I've messed up on stories. Nothing that I ever had to like retract or do a major correction on the air with. The one that I think I'll always kind of regret is I got a tip when I was working in Virginia several years ago, and it was from a solid tipster, that the governor of Virginia's executive chef was ordering items and billing them to the state, but having them delivered at his house. Excuse me. And he had a private catering company, and he was ordering items for his private company while having the state pay for them. And so I was able to track down people to talk on camera. I think we put them in silhouette because it would have revealed their identity. And I did 2 or 3 stories about this, and I went to the executive chef's house and tried to stake him out and couldn't ever get him on camera. And then I just kind of let the story go. Like, I didn't really follow it. And then like 6 months later, the Washington Post breaks a big story that the governor was involved in some sort of embezzlement type activity and was aware of what the chef was doing. And anyway, the governor of Virginia, Bob McDonnell, ended up getting charged, and a massive trial came from it. And he was found guilty, and then I think it was overturned, and I don't remember all the details. But had I stayed on it from that initial tip with the chef, I could have broken a huge story. I mean, I don't really regret it now, but I did at the time. I'm like, oh, I should have stuck on it. Truth be known, my favorite stories are feature stories, feel-good, lovey-dovey type things. I'm not a real big investigative reporter. I love to do investigative work, but, my favorite is feature stories. Are you always working? Yeah, pretty much. Ask my wife. Does Lori Vallow know who Nate Eaton is, and are you friends? We're not friends. I would imagine she knows who I am, though. What do families tell you that you can share with us? What do the families tell you that you can share with us? Oh, I'm assuming you mean the families of maybe Lori's family or Tammy's family or Charles's family. There's a lot of stuff that I'm not comfortable sharing because it's off the record or they haven't given me permission to share. But sometimes I get messages like helping me clarify stuff, or they say, you're welcome to report this. I mean, the stories I share from the families a lot, the stories I share here, so they've given me permission for that. But, yeah, I if I could share it, I would tell you. I would tell you that. A lot of this job is all about sources and building relationships and not burning relationships. So that's it. How did you and Erica meet? You guys seem like such a great pair. Do you think you could keep doing the show after the trial is over? I would watch. We love it. Oh, thank you. We met in Rexburg, Idaho, and then I moved to Virginia, where she is from, and I needed a place to stay. I didn't know anybody, and I was single. I was like 25, and I said, hey, you know anybody that needs like a roommate or a housemate? And she connected me with a guy who is one of my best friends now, and it was a house of 6 dudes, and he had 1 room left, and it was in the laundry room. I've shared this before. But it was a big laundry room, and so I moved into the laundry room, and I lived there for 2 years in his laundry room, and the dryer would soothe me to sleep. Or is that what you say? Soothe me to sleep? Put me to sleep every night. But then Erica needed an internship. We were friends. We weren't dating. She needed an internship, and she was studying journalism, and I said, well, she was coming home, and I said, come and intern at my news station. So she did. She came and interned at WRIC TV8, and she came on a few stories with me and all the other reporters. It wasn't just me. I remember one time we went to the state fair together, and I milked a cow live on camera, and I drank milk straight out of the cow, and it was disgusting, out of a cup. And then everyone at work was like, you guys should date. She's perfect. She's great. And I'm like, nah. And then I held a huge party for my 29th birthday, invited like 60 people, and had a huge cookout, and it was a blast. It went all day, all night. And I remember all these guys were flirting with her, and I'm like, wait a second. They can't do that. So I called her, and I said, I like you, Erica. I really like you, and I think we should date. And she's like, what? What are you talking about? I said, I really think we should date. And here's why. And let's give it a try. Can't believe I did that. And she goes, I'm going to need to think about this for a minute. And so I said, okay, this weekend, me and you, let's go out. Let's go out and talk. Well, then a few days later, my boss assigned me. There was a horrible murder at the University of Virginia. Yardley Love, a lacrosse player, was killed by her boyfriend. And it was the first, who was also a lacrosse player. And it was their first games following the murder. So my boss wanted me to go out to Charlottesville, Virginia, and cover their first games. So I had to call Erica and say, maybe that date. I'm not gonna be able to make it. I have a story to go to. But see, that she stuck with me, and then it took off from there. So that's how we met. Long answer to a short question. I think that's it. We got any more, Peggy? If we do, you can send them through. But if we don't, I think that covers it. We're almost at an hour here. I just want to say thank you all again for watching. Here's how you can follow me and keep up to date through the weeks. There's my Facebook page, my Twitter page. I live tweet all throughout the trial. And I post live updates on eastidahonews.com. My Instagram page is right there as well. And then we have the East Idaho News YouTube page. There's where you can find the info. Please, wherever you're watching, if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit subscribe. Then you'll get notifications every time we post anything. And if you're watching on Facebook and want to like our page, we'd appreciate that too. I hope you all have a great week. I'll be back tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Mountain Time, doing live updates, and back here tomorrow night, 7:30 p.m. Mountain Time for another Courtroom Insider. If you have questions as they pop up, please give them to you, and who knows what tomorrow will bring. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.